Okay, I'm excited for today's lesson. We are on lesson 5 of our isometric landscape project, and you've come so far. It's wild to think that in such a short time, we're going to be heading towards creating our own cool landscape design. Starting off with just the basics that we did not so long ago, learning about three-dimensional and isometric drawing. And then we started with some really simple foundational work, got our training wheels on, and you've come so far in learning subtractive techniques and removing information. And then we got into our amazing circles and cylinders and cones and domes, compass work. And now we're starting to take off the training wheels, and we're going to try to begin incorporating all that we've learned into our big landscape. Some of you also tried video number 4 and took on the massing challenge to see how fast and just how quick you could get at creating a variety of shapes and forms, just getting more comfortable with building up or from the side or from the top down so that you are ready to go today. What I want to talk about a little bit is for your project, you're going to have the option of doing an exterior view or an interior view. So I pulled up this little sample to just kind of review a little bit, if you're wanting to show any interior views, how we can begin that. Whereas in the past, we've worked really small with small structures. If you're doing something inside, we're going to want to use a large amount of our isometric grid so that when we draw in any furniture pieces or window details or doorways, those will be the smaller elements. So let me recommend that when we begin today, there's a couple places you could start. Again, if you wanted to start with the walls and delineating the different spaces between the rooms, you could do that. You could start with a main platform and begin to build off that. There's really no incorrect way to begin. So for this one, to just learn the concepts, let's start off with a huge rectangle taking up, I'm going to say most of our page. So I'm going to start somewhere in the middle, and I'm going to come and just go diagonally up for a good portion of the paper. Again, if it's difficult for you to stay on that grid line, you can sketch it out a little roughly. And then from here, I'm going to draw that front face. So we're just going to draw a rectangle in isometric view. Might not be exactly like our little sample there. We're going to play around with a couple of ideas today. So essentially, we're creating some type of parallelogram. I think I'm going to cut my floor line off here. And then from the shape, you'll notice I extended because I think I'm going to throw another wall back there at some point. Let's go ahead and draw the walls up. So to not confuse you, I might want to get rid of those for now. Let's see how tall we're going to go. And again, keep the wall height consistent. So if I go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that should give us a decent amount of space. I'll do the same over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And if you're not sure, you can check on the diagonal and see that those two are on the same endpoint. If you want to just verify it here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. When you're working large, things do take a little bit longer. But again, we'll put in our small elements later. Now, if you have an issue, let's pretend I made a mistake and I counted off and I accidentally went up too tall. You'll find that when you bring this wall down, if something is not matching up, you can just simply erase it and make that correction. So for here, everything was just fine. So now I've got, it could look to you like a cube upside down if this was the ground, but if you can flip your thinking for a moment, turn this into the floor, and now you've got 2 walls, kitty corner to a ground. If that's hard for your eyes to see, I would recommend you putting the thickness of the wall. So I would just use like a 1 block thick, showing how deep that wall is, and continue around this edge. Here we can end there. And anytime again, if you just draw over or too far, erase. And we're kind of playing that connect the dots game again, aren't we? I like to include the thickness of the floor, especially if you're going to end up doing a basement or something below. I think it helps visually to see. So hopefully now if we added those thickness, you're able to kind of figure out a little bit better and not see it like an upside down shape anymore, but rather inside of a space. First thing I want to give a try is perhaps just practicing with a simple doorway. So similar to you see over here, I would start my arch, as we remember from before, with a simple rectangle. So I'm going to make this one just 2 blocks thick. I'm making it quite tiny. From there, we're going to go ahead and on our midway point, we can draw our little grid lines there to put in a good arch. You can erase that. And if that's already so easy for you, you don't need to put those marks. You're welcome to just draw your arch within the grid. But if you remember, once we're going back into another room, we need to see that thickness of the wall. So starting again at the halfway spot, will come down and show the viewer how thick that space is. Now right now it's going back into nothingness, but we could always develop that part of the drawing later. And you could keep this transition piece here, or you could erase it if you want it to feel like it's flowing a little bit better. When it comes to putting in windows or any other types of holes, it's the same as if we did on the side of a building. The thing you want to consider is the height of the door compared to the height of the window. So if the door was this tall, typically I would see the window on that same level. So if I put a rectangle over here, then I could finish it off this way. And if you wanted to add any kind of window lines, remember some students get confused and they try to keep putting horizontals and then they wonder why their artwork looks strange. We're always going to keep those horizontals that we would see in real life are going to be on those diagonals on our grid, and the verticals just remain true. Mine looks a little bit off there, doesn't it? Okay, so we could put in a window like that, or, which I would prefer, is to have a little window sill. So we could put on our isometric rectangle and then go back in space now this way and do the parallel edges. Okay. Now let's try putting in some fun stuff, stairs. The first thing I would like you to do is just put in the area of the floor where the stairs would be. This room is not quite set up properly, so let's try instead putting our stairs here at the edge of the room. Let's give this a try. See if we like this better. Let's go ahead and just do at least a 5 by 3 area. That should be good. And we could always draw some type of stair rail or something later on. For now, there's 2 different ways we could draw it. I suppose I should show you both because you'll have to orient yourself differently. In fact, let's do 2 stairways just for the sake of it so you can kind of see the difference depending on which way it's angled. So if my stairway was here and there's my hole in the ground, you're walking on this part of the floor, then you need to go down for 1 stair. In architecture, we call this the rise and the run. So you're going to basically do this pattern of going down vertically and then diagonally down. Down vertically, diagonally down. Down vertically. Now here it's still doing the same pattern, although we would not see it because our eyes are blocked from this. But some students find it helpful to just go ahead and draw on their artwork while they're learning and then erase it later. So from here, we need to see the difference between what is a step up, and I'm going to shade it for those of you that are still struggling to see why I'm doing it. This is the flat surface you would step on, and here is the rise that's going up. And if again this is hard for your eyes to get accustomed to, feel free to sketch in those extra shading marks to help you kind of grow accustomed to it. Now, how would I know where the bottom of the staircase comes out? Well, if it's this wide, if it's 1, 2, 3 blocks wide, then I would go right behind this line and draw coming down here until I want to finish my stairs. And then I would have my L shape like we've been keeping up with. These lines would continue. So we'd have our diagonal down, vertical down, diagonal down, vertical, diagonal, vertical, diagonal. Now, if that was confusing for you, you could always erase this as well. You know, for just starting off, it can get confusing for students. Oh, forgive me. Down, diagonal. Now you can see that pattern here continuing. Diagonal down, vertical down, and then we can end our staircase. Every time we have a corner to corner, that's going to match up. And again, now we can start to hide this area of the stairs that would be hidden from our sight, at least in this view. And we've got a little gap here. Okay. Now, if we wanted to, let's try from a different angle, and just so we can get accustomed to it. Go ahead and put in those hatch marks. I think it's beneficial to help you see the difference. All right. Now, if that was a struggle to put it inside our room, you could also just give it a try somewhere else on your paper where you don't have any interference with any floorboards or anything. For this one, I wouldn't start my stairs going here because unless there's a doorway, there's no way to get to this side of the stairs. So I'm thinking of the walking floor plan. I could come out here and go down my stairs, or if I came this way, perhaps my person is walking that way. Now in this case, these stairs are not facing our eye viewpoint. So imagine here if I had a step down, diagonal down. So it looks quite different when we go this way. Would you agree? So I would imagine this part of the stair coming all the way down, this as well. So they look a little bit more harsh coming from this angle. And the odd part is that when we go back in space to show the thickness, we're not seeing the entire stair like we normally would in other areas. We're only seeing a part of it. Then I would need to erase so you can see. And again, I'm sorry, this would not be here. I hope that didn't confuse you anymore. I just want for those of you that are having a hard time continuing the pattern behind an opaque surface. So we still have this as the thickness of the floor. Imagine if this was the constructed area. And I wouldn't recommend shading your final project, but for this exercise, it'll work just fine. So, and then we have this hole, and the person would be stepping down onto that first step. So, shall we try some furniture? Let's give it a shot. So imagine we had a bed. We could do something very much similar to what we would do for anything. I like to start furniture usually by putting the shape on the ground. So let's imagine we have this huge king-size bed here. And then I can decide how tall or thick I want it to be. In this case, I'm going to go up one block, and then I could build the shape of the mattress. If I just use a harsh curve or a harsh line like that, it's not going to look very realistic. So I love to encourage students, once you see that basic shape, you could even drape it. You could do a softened edge. You could kind of soften the line work here to make it look a little bit smoother and not so harsh, depending on the style of the bed or if it has a dust ruffle. And if you wanted to create a headboard, the same could be true. I could do a rectangular headboard. Of course, that looks like a thin piece of paper, so I might want to pull it out like a half of a block thick. That would look better, although I lose a little bit of my mattress shape here, didn't I? So I think it's helpful to just see those wireframes first And then you can go through. It's almost like the opposite of creating our window, whereas before we pushed in, now we're pulling out little shapes. So that would be a basic headboard, but you could also shape it and sculpt it if you wanted to have a curve or an arched shape. You could change your design. So hopefully you're starting to see how we can manipulate these shapes to kind of get the look that we want. So I just changed my rectangle to a curve. Cool. Now we could get into bedside tables. Let's try putting in another piece of furniture. How about if we did like an armoire or a dresser of some kind? So for this one, I'm going to start off with a basic shape on the wall. Last time we started on the floor, but for this one, I think I'd like to go ahead. I don't want to go taller than the door. That would look a little ridiculous for an armoire. So I'll keep it as tall as my door, and I'm using this as my measuring line to check that out. From here, I'm going to pull out into the space. Now it could be really deep, like some type of deep wardrobe, but I think I'm going to keep mine just 1 block thick, and I'm going to build that frame forward similar to how I did the headboard. And again, there's the top layer of the box and the bottom. And that could just be some cool shape in the room as well, but I'm going to finish and close off the full case of furniture. If I wanted to, I can get rid of that wireframe. So you just see the front surface. You're not going to see where the carpet is or where that baseboard is anymore. Now I could just put a simple line right at the halfway line going down, but I think it might be fun if we wanted to add some cool woodworking finishes. We could do any shape we like. So imagine this is 3 blocks thick. What if I put a little notch here? Whatever shape we do, remember, we can do the same thing by just bringing these matching curves in the back. And then we can have some more fun with some of these architectural details. Put some knobs on, what have you. So we're moving from the more whimsical, unnatural shapes and considering how we can turn these into some practical things that we'd want to build, whether we put in a lamp or a lamp stand or what have you. We could begin to do that as well. So play around with some of these fun shapes and feel welcome to add any hand-drawn elements that you think would be fun for your room. Maybe you want to put a wall or a pony wall in to protect someone from falling down your staircase. That might be a good one in this room, right? So if we put in a little border wall, now we have a loft space almost, right? So feel free to start playing around with some of these internal elements. I'm trying to think of what else might be really helpful. Dresser drawers, any type of details that you're putting on. I'm gonna remove this window actually and talk about another option. What if we were to put in some type of dresser? So I'll do a long cabinet here. I'm gonna draw the floor shape. And instead of drawing the whole back wall, I'm gonna start building from this area. 2 blocks tall. Now from here, whenever you're, again, putting on drawers, just consider that whatever is vertical or horizontal, excuse me, in real life is going to be on these diagonals. So if these were my vertical drawers, then they're going to sit on those diagonal spaces. And if these little nitty-gritty spots are hard to get into, you're welcome to pull out a ruler. I know sometimes it's tricky to keep your verticals vertical when you're going off the grid, but when you pan out and see the whole thing, it's going to look really cool. For other elements, we'll do another video and I'll talk to you guys a little bit more on some other things. What happens if we were to add some rooms onto the back? For example, let's say we didn't want to keep just this one view. We wanted to build on and add on to things. We could continue this going back off the page, and this could be a completely other space that we see. So I'm gonna build another wall here, put in the back corner. Now the tricky part is making sure that this baseboard or floor line coordinates with this room. If I were to go ahead like this and put in a floor, your eye would immediately pick up on this problem and realize this wall is a lot taller than this wall and something's not right. So double check and go ahead and bring those baseboards and use these grid lines to help you figure out where that wall would truly end. It's not way up here. The only view we would see, which is kind of tricky, is actually right there on the floor line. So really, if we were to see in the way I've drawn it, you'd only get the walls in sight, unless of course you had a huge cutout in that wall as well. We could also go back in this space this way, and the walls don't have to necessarily touch in the same area, so I could add this. And this is where your final project paper is going to be a huge blessing for you, so you don't feel like you are stuck and confined to these little areas. So all of this will start to come together. Likewise, if you want to build down, you're welcome to add walls this way. And they don't have to end at the same level. If you wanted to pull something out farther, within reason, if we were to have extra grid space, right? I'm gonna fudge it here so you can just see. Now, I probably wanted to keep them the same height again. We did 10, I believe, so I would do the same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Keep that consistency. This way we could have some fun. Now this looks quite unnatural as you start to piece it together. And if you find something that's off like that, you're like, wow, this has a staircase, but it's not even backed up. And would you really want to walk down some strange hallway? If you're doing a wild and whimsical world, that might seem really cool to you if it's some kind of a maze-like feeling. But if you're wanting to correct that, you can always pull things back as well. So continue to play around with your shapes. Don't necessarily leave something there if you don't like it. You could always make this a little bit deeper. Although if we adjust one thing, we're going to end up adjusting quite a bit more. Okay? So that's completely up to you. If you wanted to leave it there and have a walkway or put a doorway or whatever you like, you can have fun with these things. And then we could decide too where this room is complete, or if the wall is here. It's completely up to you guys. Of course, that's not going to work because then the person coming down the stairs would be walking into a wall. So let's open that up for them. It's funny. And we'll keep the floorboard going here. And we can imagine this is an open space where they could continue on. Okay, so a lot of this is a lot of fun to work with the interior views. Feel free if you'd like to put roof lines on top, or if you want to keep them open. I've had students do glass ceilings and glass floors. If you're wanting something more realistic look, that's great as well. But I hope you had fun just trying to figure out multiple interior views and playing around with opening up spaces and some different shapes. The next video, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some connections and platforms that I'd love to see you use for your final project. Hope that was fun.